Hello again, everyone. Again, my name is Ijoma Osuji. I work for the Department of War, Military Community and Family Policy Child and Youth Programs. So I work very closely with Vanessa Tranel, and I've done some project with Jenny as well, with our partnership with 4-H and supporting all of the military service branches, both on and off base. Thank you.
So thank you for helping today. Gemma's going to help me with the chat and some things like that. For those of you who I haven't met before, I'm Jenny Jordan. I'm the Navy 4-H Youth Program Specialist, and I work on a grant-funded project through NC State University. Primarily, I have the lovely opportunity to support Navy-connected children, youth, and families, but because of our SCIFAR connection as well, I work holistically on things like this event. And so I'm very excited today to dive in with y'all on a topic that's really near and dear to my heart and that Dave Francis queued up for us so well for those of you who may have been with us this morning. So, we're going to talk a little bit about how those sparks that young people have, their passions that can help ignite those careers, what those professional pathways, and what they might do in the future. And I think back to my own 4-H experience where I was a Georgia 4-H'er. I was never working on a motor or whatever contraption that this young man is doing, but I had an opportunity to do a lot of different things. And through that, I also saw with my co 4-Hers that we had a 4-H agent who was incredibly good at identifying what we were good at. But what he did better than anything was give us lots of experiences. And that's what Dave was talking about before, is when you have those experiences and you can ignite that spark. There was a young man in our program when I was in high school who didn't quite fit. We had a really close-knit group, and he was kind of the odd duck. You always have that one who he's kind of in the group, but not really. And he even kind of embraced that differences and would even call attention to that. But one of the things that happened in the course of our program is our 4-H agent handed him a camera. Now, I want you to remember this is not back in the days where we had a cell phone camera. This is where he handed him a camera with a lens with an f-stop and all of those things. You'll have to look in the Smithsonian to see what that looked like. But you actually had to have some skills. And Wayne was really good at taking pictures. And in our 4-H projects, we needed pictures of us doing things. So all of a sudden, Wayne had a job that helped him connect. He became part of our group and we needed him in a different way because he could do something that none of us could do. Wayne had never held a camera before, but it became a passion for his. Recently, because I'm old, Wayne retired. He has served over 40 years as a cover photographer for nationally recognized business magazines. Business Trends, Georgia Trends, all of those have published pictures that Wayne made. That spark happened in a 4-H program. And we're going to kind of talk about how we do that, whether we have littles who are kindergarten, first, and second grade, they're not even thinking about the rest of their lives, or we're working with those teens to really how do we take those sparks to a career? How do we get them to think about what might you do with your life based on what this is? We are going to focus a little bit too around military careers because again, we're part of our military audience. So we're looking specifically at taking that project and looking at a project activity or something we've done. What skill are you really developing in that project? And then what are the possibilities with that? With Wayne, it was easy. He got good at taking pictures. But some of us had all kinds of different projects that really developed skills that we use every day. And I'm going to share a little bit about what mine came from the 4-H program that may surprise you that I use every day in the work we do. What we'll be looking at is how you as an adult help that teen spot the skill and how then you connect it to possibilities. So not just saying, hey, you could be an engineer and planting that seed, but looking at what is that skill that has so many possibilities to it. And then what are those possibilities even wider? I'm going to go ahead and throw out an example to that. It's a real life example at my house. So my younger brother is an artist. He is incredibly good at drawing. I am not, and he has been good at it his whole life. And when he first went out into the work world, his first job was with Hot Wheels. He designed the packaging for Hot Wheels. Have you ever thought about that really the package of what you buy, an artist designed? Well, he didn't love that for very long, and he got hooked up with a group. He has a very entrepreneurial spirit of independent video game designers. And he wound up doing the art for a computer generated game from about 20 years ago now called Monster Loves You. And he drew all the background art because all of those pictures that you see, someone has designed. Somebody makes Mario do those jumping. He came up with that. Today, he went from that to in the gaming industry. Think about Dungeons and Dragons. Now, he never designed Dungeons and Dragons, but those kinds of games that have all the pieces to them and all the collateral things and all the cards, he did all the art for that. Today, he's independent. He just draws stuff and goes to things like Comic-Con and makes more money than I do. So I share that to say no one said you can just be an artist. He looked at what could he do with the skills that he had and continued to expand those possibilities over a career. So that's a little bit to what we want to think about, not just jobs that there are, but also what are those possibilities and how do we get teens or even our little ones to begin to think about if I'm good at something, what can I do with this? How do I transfer this skill to something else? How does it apply to other things that I'm going to do? Now, I want to shift gears a little bit in here because I just said we're not going to talk about jobs, and I'm going to ask you to, because I want you to think about when you think about military careers, what are some of the careers that immediately come to mind? Drop in the chat. What are some careers you think of with the military? What's the first one you think of? Pilots. Might probably have an Air Force person, maybe Navy. An engineer, scouts, cook. Look at all the different things you're already beginning to come up with. Submariner, fighter, pilot. Yeah, look at that list. You know, it's interesting too because we know, but interestingly, a few years ago, oh, keep that list coming. We got great ones here. A group of teens brought up during National 4-H Conference, the Department of Defense at the time, now Department of War, asked the question, how do we recruit young people to join the military? And one of the things they brought up is that when you think of military careers, what we flash out there as careers tend to be the very stereotypical military careers, the combat missions, the aircraft carriers, flying the planes. We don't talk about all the different potential that is out there. So I think this applies even more broadly than just military as well. When we think about careers and opportunities, we tend to pigeonhole things very small. And so as we go through the next 20 minutes or so, thinking about this idea of sparks to careers, I want us to think about really broadly almost anything that you would ever want to do in the military. They're small cities. They need everything. And when we think about most jobs out there, it kind of applies. We need people who fix things. We need people who analyze things. We need people who move things. We need people who teach others. As we think about that, with skills, those durable skills that Dave was talking about this morning, those leadership skills, teamwork, adaptability, transferable things like technical, logical skills, our communication skills feed into every career out there, whether it's STEM and cyber, healthcare and wellness, logistics and supply chain, engineering and skilled trades, education and training, communication and media, leadership and management, or even our environment and ag related jobs. The thing is, most kids never sit down and say, I want to grow up and to be a supply chain operator. They really don't. They probably don't even know it exists. So, what we need to do is begin, even with our littles, and have them thinking about what are the skills I have and what do they transfer in? What are the things I love? What am I good at? And when I love and am passionate about something, where does it go? What can I do with that? So let's look a little bit about how that might happen. When we think about 4-H projects, or for that matter, not just 4-H projects, any activity or program we do, the project tells us what a young person is doing, what they're capable of doing. It doesn't necessarily talk about the skills that they're becoming capable of doing, what things they learn. So I'm going to now take you back to one of my 4-H projects. When I was in 4-H, I participated in 4-H poultry judging. In fact, I went to national poultry judging. I actually got some money that helped me pay for college out of that. Now, let me tell you a little bit about what you do in poultry judging. In poultry judging, you grade things. You grade just like a USDA inspector. So, you know, if you've ever noticed when you walk into the grocery store and you pick up some eggs, they're grade A eggs. I know actually how to grade an egg and tell you if it actually is a grade A egg. It's on exterior and interior quality, and I can actually do that. I can look at a ready to cook carcass, which, for lack of a better word. It's what you like a rotisserie chicken before it's cooked. And those also are graded. In fact, the only ones you'll see in the grocery store are going to be a grade A. But I could tell you if I was in a meat packing plant, I could tell you if it was going to go on to be your rotisserie chicken, if it's going to be cut up into parts or become a chicken nugget, just based on how it was graded. In fact, if we had a live white leghorn production hen, which is a white hen with yellow legs, I could tell you about how many eggs she's laid right now in her laying cycle. Now, these are all really cool things if I one day want to be on like, what's some weird skill you have? But how does that translate into anything I do now in my career? I mean, I work with 4-H, but beyond that, there's not a whole lot of things as a Navy 4-H youth program specialist that requires me to grade an egg or look at a hen and tell you how many eggs she's laid. But what I do have to do is I have to assess a lot of information and make decisions from that. I have to work as part of a team. I have to defend reasons. And part of what we did in poultry judging is make a decision and defend why we made that decision. And a lot of what I do is make a determination and then explain why that matters. I put things together based on a grade, based on a rubric. It's all the same skills. It has nothing to do with grading eggs, but it has everything to do with how you present your ideas and how you clearly explain how something's happened, how you assess the situation and make a decision. And that's really what we're looking at when we work with young people in this way. What skills are happening around a project that really show us what we might be doing one day. Yes, Brent, we can start doing those about egg grading and poultry judging. I'm afraid next program we go to, Brent's going to have me a live hen right there and make me prove to him that I can tell him how many eggs it's laid. I can do it. Now, I'm going to ask y'all to do the same thing about what skills are here. We do lots of cooking projects, maybe not in our kitchens, but we have lots of cooking projects, I know. So I want you to think about this picture. What are some of the skills? And you can either, we're a small group, you can come off mic and share or write in the chat. What are some of the skills that are being developed by this young person who right now is making something? Yes, there's some science in it. There's a lot of science in baking. Measurement, weighing and measurement, precision, right? What else we got? Reading comprehension, that's a great one. Time management. Oh my gosh, have you ever planned that meal and it didn't come out on time? They could be the next Gordon Ramsay right there, right? Yeah, maybe some showmanship's even coming in here, right? So if we think about that, and this goes to exactly what y'all have said, there is some complex technical steps. There's some logistics and processing. There's measurement and precision. There's adaptability. Oh, I like the tool, making decision making with those tools. There's adjusting to a failure mid-task. Like, he's got a spill and he's cleaning it up, right? Supply chain even. Time and resources. You brought so many of these up. When you think about this, there is a science behind baking. We can teach a lot to young people about chemistry and action. But then there's so much y'all just brought up, that spatial awareness. What do you do when you make a mistake? What happens mid recipe when you realize that you just used powdered sugar and it was supposed to be flour because you got the wrong box out? Can you fix it? What happens if you want to use just egg whites instead of whole eggs? Can you replace applesauce for oil? There's all kinds of questions you might ask, but then also, how do we adapt recipes? All of that comes from that person who is there in that kitchen experimenting while they're cooking. So, as we think about a project like this, a young person, and Dave brought this up in gardening, they might get excited about the final product, but some of them get excited about the creativity of making the recipe, of putting all the ingredients together. And those are very different things that spark is about. And they're very different skills, although they're doing the same thing that they may fix in. So I want us to think about this a little bit more as we look at this cooking project. So when we think about this spark funnel, this whole, how do the skills travel? We're trying to match a young person not with a job, but what are they learning that creates a wide open possibility. And so in that same way with that cooking project, they're understanding that food science, the chemical reactions. There's that culinary arts, that flavor pairing and plating. that nutrition, that dietary health and planning, and then hospitality, which one of y'all actually even asked about in the last group. That whole idea of how do we do event management and service? Once we have it all done, how does it look good? What do we do with that? So, as we think about for young people, those sparks, those things that excite them, thinking about what are not just all the possible careers, but what are those skills? What are they really learning to do? So, I want to give you a chance to do something like that. So, we've got a little small group, and I'm going to actually really quickly set, oops, sorry. I was going to send us in a breakout room, but I think what we'll do, I'm going to ask y'all to open up your mic or put in the chat, give me a 4-H project. And we're going to think about, as a group, what are some of the skills that you have from that project? And then what are the potential career fields? We're small enough, I think we can do it as our big group. So if you want to come off mic and just toss out a project, it could even be an activity y'all do, or put it in the chat and we'll talk about it as a group. Let's kind of process it out.
Jenny, this is Prudence from Florida. How are you?
Prudence, how are you?
Good. We have a line dancing club in our county.
Line dancing club. Okay, we're going to do line dancing club and then Daisy will do egg to chick. Okay. So, line dancing club. Let's think about in line dancing. What are some of the skills we're learning in line dancing? What are some of the things that you learn besides the actual steps to the cha cha slide? Timing. That's a great one. Memorization. That's very good. Coordination. Yes. Listen comprehension. Balance. Brent, you said earlier too, spatial awareness. Part of line dancing is not bumping into somebody else, right? Great. What else?
I have noticed a sense of belonging with the kids
Uh-huh.
and confidence boosting because a few of them, when they first, like, their first night there, they just stand in the corner and all of our kids are like, oh no, come on, it's real easy. They tell you what to do. The song says move to the left, move to the right. It just tells you what to do. And so they will pull those kids. I mean, getting them to the building is the first step,
Yeah.
but yeah, I've really noticed the kids will start to dance, even though, when they first got there, they were very uncomfortable.
I like that too. You brought up to that sense of belonging that comes out of that. Also, you think about that they have the ones who are bringing others in, what kind of they're learning a skill themselves. Like, how do you create cohesiveness? How do you create team? You know, it takes a special person to be the Pied Piper that brings everyone in, right? So, even that in and of itself is that person who's the leader, being able to say to that young person, I notice that you are really good at seeing what your peers need and encouraging them. That's a skill too. And we think about what are managers, what are leaders, what are the CEOs of companies supposed to be? They're supposed to be those people who can bring those in, right? You also brought up following directions in there. The music's going to tell us what to do. So there's some skills right there, following directions, bringing people together, spatial awareness, coordination, listening comprehension. When we think about possible careers, besides being a dancer on a cruise ship, what are some possible careers outside of dance? Would someone who really found a spark in line dancing possibly able to translate these skills we named into in the future? What are some other things they might do with that? Childcare, that's a great one. Teaching, that's another good one. There's someone who's really good at helping others. A counselor.
And Jenny, I will share, the young man who wanted to start this club went to SRTLC and didn't know the dances.
Okay.
And he said, I want a line dancing club. And I said, well, we got to have a leader. And he said, can I be the leader? And I felt like an idiot telling him he couldn't because he was a kid and we're supposed to be teaching leaders, these kids to be leaders. And I was like, yeah. So he is our quote unquote club leader. We always have about 8 parents there and sometimes they dance too.
Yeah.
But he will every night they meet once a month, and every night they will do one new dance. Like he will stop and they follow the choreograph lesson on YouTube, and he teaches, and it's sometimes like his mom says, oh, he practices that dance all week when it's time to do line dancing. So he's able to teach it. So being prepared, I've noticed he does that as well.
Well, I think about too his example. One of the skills I heard you say is he noticed something that was lacking in your program, right? And oh, I love it, Daisy, because I'm almost getting to that business owner has to get others on board, right? He could own the dance studio. I think he could be you think about somebody who works in public policy or someone who works in community building. You have to be able to identify what a need is and figure out how to solve that problem. So he's a problem solver, right? Now, his problem was his own, but he's a problem solver. He saw a need and he found the solution for that. And that also, in and of itself, is a very important skill that we probably don't think about. I thought about too in dancing how important that spatial awareness is. You think about though, like engineers who design things. You think about interior designers. Now, there's a lot more to it than spatial awareness, but organizers, people who physically organize things, logistics and supply chain, a lot of that's about how much space do I have to fill and how do I fill it. So we're talking about dancing, but if you're really good at knowing that, that transfers into a lot of other things as well. Let's pop to I saw I think Daisy mentioned the egg to chick project. So when you raise the chick to egg project, the egg to chick, yeah, I'll get the words right. When you raise the eggs till they hatch, right? So what are some of the skills that go into doing that project? So what are some of the skills besides just physically keeping something alive that patience? That's a big one. They got to practice some patience. What else? Caring for others. Very good, Ajoma. That's a great one. Timing. In that patience, there is a sequence and timing, and there are some very specific instructions you have to follow in how you care for them, that responsibility as well. Active listening, yes, paying attention. You can't just pick up the eggs willy-nilly while they're hatching. Um, the journal from the kids' perspective, I love that. Looking at it from the what do they think? So thinking about things from someone else's perspective. So as we think about those different skills, so of course, if you have done this project, maybe you're going to wind up with a love for the poultry industry. And if you're in the state of Georgia, we would love you because we're number one in poultry, and that's where I live. So there's a whole career within poultry that you could be. There could be something in vet medicine. There could be something, as y'all have already talked about, like counselor or teacher. What are some other things that in this project that might translate to some other skills or careers? A doctor, yes. Anything that solves a problem. Because along the way, when you're raising eggs to hatch, there's going to be some problems you might need to solve. What happens if the power goes out on your incubator, right? Yes, engineering, how does it happen? A vet, all of these. So part of what the idea is when we work with young people, we want to make sure that we're thinking about all of these things. And I had to kind of cheat one in case we had nothing come up. So the idea of, in robotics, you're really thinking about things like troubleshooting, persisting through failure, systems logic, which transfers into cybersecurity, drone operations, and being a systems engineer. A photographer who does that storytelling, who's editing, who's very good at observing, they might be great for public affairs or any kind of communications job or intelligence. When you think about leadership roles, all of that we talked about running a business, that decision making and conflict resolution and strategic planning. Being an officer, when we think military, or being that person who is in charge of a business or a manager. Things like responsibility lead to project management, public relations, needs assessment. Those public speaking, the confidence under pressure. I think about Prudence's dancer, he wanted to learn line dancing and he's willing to invest in that time to do those things. That's a lot of confidence. And that really goes a long way for anyone who's going to be in a pressure kind of situation. I think about the newscaster or the person who does briefings, who has to respond to questions and answers in different situations. Those are all very important skills and roles that may come to that. The trick for us, though, is pretty simple, but it's also really difficult. As adults, we need to make sure we're not dictating a career, not saying here's something you're good at, but saying, let's look at a skill and let's explore it from there. Instead of you're good at robotics, have you ever thought about being an engineer? Yes, that's an opportunity, but it can be judgmental and limiting. It might just have one path. Whereas if you're great at troubleshooting when things break, that's used in engineering and in cyber development and aviation. Do any of those sound interesting to you? It's much more curious and expansive. It's about skill based and it focuses on competency. So, beginning to have us think about when we're working with young people, no matter what their age are, when we see the things they're good at, giving them lots of opportunities to try out those skills. Like Prudence, I would lean on that young man who came to you with line dancing. And that may wind up being his passion. It's about the dancing, but maybe it's also about helping people feel like they fit in because that's really where that came from. And saying, are there other things you noticed when you went to SRTLC, which y'all, that's a Southern Region Leadership Conference for teens in the southern part of the U.S., so those southern states, the leadership conference in Tennessee. When you went there, that other ways that you felt like we could help feel more a part of things when we got there? What other things would help people feel like they belonged? Because he obviously has that empathetic nature. He noticed something was different and asking
He
those
is
questions. Go
he is
ahead, Prudence.
on the SRTLC planning committee this
Yay!
year.
Okay, so
So
see, he's already on it, right? But encouraging that, it's more than just he taught someone to line dance. That young person, even that second grader who's sitting there fascinated, watching, very patiently watching those chicks hatch, saying, you have been so patient with this. What are some other things that you are willing to take your time to do? What are some other things you'd like to do that maybe you have to spend a lot of time waiting? Kids today aren't great waiters. And so giving them that opportunity to talk about how are some other ways that that plays. So it comes down to this. It's called the See It conversation. You don't have to be a career counselor to possibly change a youth trajectory. You don't even have to have a camera to put into somebody's hand or any of those different things. It's that you spot the skill. What are you noticing that they are doing very well? What is it that you see that you can say, hey, I noticed this and you're doing it well? Explain where it shows up. Give the skill a name out loud. You are very good at seeing how others feel. That empathy will carry you a long way. Expand those possibilities and connect it to diverse fields. What are the different ways that you can think about saying, there's all different ways that empathy plays out. Um, Invite curiosity. Ask them what sounds interesting to them. Tie it to some next steps. Offer them some real examples. Back to Prudence's with the young man who wanted to do a line dance club. She gave him a chance to lead. Would you like to do this? Would you like to say, what would you like to try? I love to Nikki bringing up doing these kinds of things with job seeking teens. When they're trying to figure out what they might like to do, it's their first job, but look at the different skills that they're good at. My own children had lots of different jobs as throughout high school, and they all tied back to experiences they had had. My daughter very much had all jobs though that were very much in the people side of things. She taught gymnastics at a gymnastics center. She worked at a formal wear store, and then she was also a nanny, and they were all evolved around kids and events. And so as you think about that, that very much played into the same track. My son did a lot of behind the scenes thing. Ultimately, now he's a restaurant manager and works very well in planning those kinds of things. But his experiences weren't as focused on being part of working with people as much as they were about working with systems. And so those are very different skills that they enjoy. And as you think about that, helping point kids in those right directions. What do you notice them doing well? Give that skill a name. Expand those possibilities. Ask them what sounds good and then tie it to their next steps. So when we think about that young person in robotics, you're saying those things like, I noticed that you never give up when the code fails. Me, if it doesn't work the first time, I'm just done, right? My Rubik's Cube never's been solved. Okay, that's okay. But for some people, they're going to keep doing it. You do a lot of highly technical troubleshooting. That kind of problem solving is critical in engineering, cybersecurity, military aviation. What other kinds of things do you use problem solving for? what might be fun to you? And then as you're helping guide them or maybe exposing that spark a little further, giving them that chance to see things and try things out. The more young people can try things on at an earlier age, the better they can really see where that spark is headed. So, my challenge for you is to begin to think about in your program, how does this play out? So, it doesn't happen in the abstract. It happens when one adult like you decides with one young person to connect their passion to their potential. So, what are you seeing in skills? Who talking to the young person could benefit from those skills? And then how can you help provide additional experiences or opportunities that will introduce them to that see it language, that will give them a chance to think about things beyond the basic and the obvious? This also happens too, of course, while the way we well round out our programming, that we provide the opportunity for kids to try lots of different things so they do find their sparks, but then also they're exposed to lots of different opportunities. But it's as simple as the conversations that you have. And we think back to Dave's conversation this morning, part of Beyond Ready is that belonging, that connection with a caring adult, that engagement side, and then also how they connect it to the future. It's also part of experiential learning. So we begin to let young people experience things. We talk about what they're experiencing and then say to them, hey, you're really good at a skill, not robotics. You're really good at sticking with it when it's hard. You'll keep trying. You're really good at making things that are difficult simple and sharing that with others. How much you want to do that again? What can we do here in our program that can give you a chance to practice those skills? What is something you might want to do in the future that might tie to? All thinking in that bigger range of skills versus just an activity. So when we think about it, the project is just the beginning. Our young people, they're out there taking pictures, they're singing, they're speaking, they're doing robotics, it's arts and crafts. It's raising the chick. And it's so funny. Some of the things that y'all brought up are exactly on my last slide. It's only if I had line dancing, Prudence. But that's really not what we're after. They don't know that they're learning those durable skills that they need more than anything. They don't know that when they stand before the podium and they inspire an audience, that they're learning to read a room and decide what needs to be said to call to action. They don't know that when they're being very creative and coloring their frog red instead of green and coming up with all these different things that they can do with their image, that creativity that they have, the unique way they see the world is a different skill. They don't know when they're trying and failing and trying and failing and trying and failing and being persistent in that robotics project, that's a skill that everyone doesn't have. They don't know when they're patient to watch that egg hatch, that patience is going to take them much further than even watching that chick hatch ever will be. Or that camera in their hand gives them a view of the world that no one else has. And they have the precision and the skill that may be different, whether it's with a camera or maybe it's with a tool that designs something entirely different. So our whole goal is, as we think about Spark to Career, is that we help young people think about what is the skill they're developing in that big picture way in that little project that then transforms to something even greater. So, y'all, I was really quick as we went through this for a couple of reasons. One, I really wanted to spark for you how you might go back into your programs and think about how we ignite passion to pathways, how we create careers and futures for young people, in just giving them the ideas of what is possible.